This is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for August 1st, 12 noon. Here's the outlook from the National Hurricane Center. About a 60% or so chance of this system becoming a tropical storm over the next 24 hours. This red circle out here is indicating a high chance of development from the National Hurricane Center. And we have a low chance for the system in the Western Caribbean. That should move into Central America and be a non-factor. So all eyes are on Invest 91L out here in the East Atlantic. Here's a close-up of Invest 91L moving slowly to the west-northwest. The forward speed should pick up a little bit on this system. Now, this was the system that was off of the African coast about 24 hours ago or 36 hours south of the Cape Verde Islands, and it kind of merged with Invest 91 over here, which dissipated, and the whole area gathered together and started a rotation down here, and they've labeled this as 91L. And this is the one that should go ahead and become Tropical Storm Colin over the next 48 hours or so. Back in 1955, we had a system developing out right pretty much in the same place out here around August 3rd in the East Atlantic, and that would become a major hurricane here north of the Leeward and Windward Islands. Found a weakness in the ridge, moved northwest, kind of lingered down here, and then headed north into the Outer Banks of North Carolina as a Category 1/Category 2 hurricane back in 1955. Also, a few days later, we had Diane form in the East Atlantic as well on August 7th, and this took a more northerly path, found a weakness in the ridge, and then the ridge built back in, shoving this to the west into Wilmington as a Category 1 hurricane. But the similarities of these two systems is they both became major, and then they both weakened as they headed toward the United States. Now, some early indications from the models are that this may happen with this system out in the East Atlantic. We'll have to wait and see. It's always interesting to go back and reference history and certain dates and times, because there is a factor in the time of the year and what happens with a lot of systems. And in 2004, Alex formed July 31st here, and then clipped the Outer Banks in early August as a Category 2 hurricane, and then scooted out to sea quickly. So the two systems before that, though, Diane and Connie in 1955, that might be an indication of what's to come. We'll have to wait and see on that. Here's a vapor image from the East Atlantic showing Invest 91L. The system is really well organized. You notice they have feeder bands out in here. There's a big group of thunderstorms and showers here where there's a low pressure co-located with this. And what's interesting is you have this dry air slot behind this, trough behind it. Generally, when you have a trough following a system like this, that indicates rising air over the top of our tropical depression, which is very favorable for development. You look at some of the more powerful hurricanes in history, there's always been a trough like this following it with sinking air behind the system. So this should go ahead and develop pretty quickly, as it's got a very good favorable upper level environment. University of Wisconsin upper level maps here. We have 40 knots of shear north of the system, but that's good for it. That aids in the outflow and the upper levels to evacuate the air north of the system. But some indication is that this might linger over here north of the Antilles in about 5 or 6 days, and that's why some of the models tend to show a little bit of weakening here when it gets north of Puerto Rico. We'll have to wait and see if that pans out, but we have a little ridge here east of the Windward and Leeward Islands, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, because there is a ridge building over the top of Invest 91L out here, and that should travel in tandem with this and maybe shield it a little bit. So it'll be an interesting thing to see what the models indicate is going to happen here in the coming days. Now here's the divergence in the upper levels. Notice the 30s out here. This is a lot of air evacuating up in the upper levels out here, and again, that's a very favorable environment. Now if you look at the inflow at the surface, the winds are coming in pretty good. It could be a little higher out here, so there's not as much inflow as there is outflow on the system, but that should catch up over the next 24 hours. All right, here is the hot towers out here. These are the hot towers that Jack shows on the message board all the time at canetalk.com. And, you know, this is some indication that we have a strengthening system as well. We have a lot of high rising, all these blue dots indicate high rising clouds up into the atmosphere, which are called hot towers and collateral hot towers, and they're moving generally in tandem with this. So this should go ahead and strengthen. There's a lot of energy associated with 91L, and this should go ahead and develop out here. Now, what are the early models saying on this system? Here's the early runs, all west-northwest. north of the Leeward Islands. But interestingly, the European model takes this right through the northern Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, skims Hispaniola, heads into the Bahamas and towards the Florida Keys and into the Gulf. And the European model is a very good model. This shows it around the 9th or the 10th of August heading towards Florida, so we'll have to see if that plays out. The NOGAPS model takes this towards the Windward and Leeward Islands, as well as the North American mesoscale model. Now, the GFDL and the HWRF are not run yet on this model. We'll have that information later this afternoon. We'll talk more about that on the show tonight, the Weather and the Media show. I'll get to more on that in just a minute. But we do have Chris's model map up here, model intensity forecast, that he's developed a program that extracts this data. And you can see on the chart here that we're expecting maybe Cat 1's solid Cat 1 in about 84 hours, according to the LGEM, the ship's model, and the LGEM, as I said, and the IVCN model all indicate Category 1 and then weakening a little bit thereafter down to strong tropical storm or minimal Category 1 hurricane. And then you have some of the other models like the Schiffer 5 and the NOGAPS model that keep this as a tropical storm all the way until it gets to the Caribbean. And then the Schiffer model and the NGPI indicate this may not even get up to tropical storm status in 72 hours. So there's a discrepancy in the models here, but the overall trend to look at is the fact that this could weaken about 84 to 100 hours down the road. Now here are the aviation ensemble models. And notice the trend with all these as well. It peaks out about 84 to 100 hours, and then some of them start to take it back down again around 120 hours, which is 5 days, because of potential wind shear in the western Atlantic basin. So we'll have to see if that pans out down the road. But Chris creates these models at tropicalatlantic.com, and we're going to have Chris on. Here he is. We're going to have Chris on tonight on the Weather and the Media show, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on HurricaneCity.tv. He's going to talk about all the products he's producing at tropicalatlantic.com. He's the creator of Cane Talk message board as well. We'll have Chris on via Skype live, and you'll be able to take your calls and questions, email or call in during the show, and Chris will be happy to take your questions. This is the first time we're using Skype, so we'll have to see how that goes tonight. But Chris spends some time looking at the hurricane hunters, and he's all involved in the hurricane hunter programs and everything. So we're going to talk a lot about that tonight, as well as Invest 91L. Well, that's it for now. We'll be back with another update tomorrow. If you're watching this video in the morning, we've already had the show, and the archive subscribers will be able to watch the recorded version of the Weather and the Media show tonight. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.